Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new Pokemon TCG video. Today's video will focus around the Mega Rayquaza EX of the Colorless type. This is certainly the more hyped about Mega Rayquaza EX, and for good reasons. I mean, number one, the Emerald Break attack is a very solid one. It doesn't seem all that impressive because it only hits for up to 30 damage times the number of bench Pokemon that we have at play. Usually that would mean that the damage caps at a total of 150 damage. However, with the Skyfield Stadium card, we're able to load up to 8 bench Pokemon, so that's what really makes Mega Rayquaza EX such a menacing Pokemon, allowing us to potentially head for up to 240 damage. More than enough to knock out every single Pokemon in play, with the only exception being the Wailord EX. So this is very much a fearsome Pokemon. And I can definitely see why there is such hype behind it, just because it's an extremely powerful deck as well. Also, I have to see that the Delta Evolution ability only makes the Mega Rayquaza EX all that much more powerful. I mean, we are able to evolve the Rayquaza EX into the Mega Rayquaza EX right away, so that's something else that I really like about the Mega Rayquaza EX. And yeah, so just all around, it's an extremely solid Pokemon. Now, the biggest weakness to the Mega Rayquaza EX falls on the fact that it has the Lightning weakness, but we can compensate for that as well, since we are going to be running a 1 Swablu, 1 Altaria line. With the Clear Humming ability, it will prevent our Mega Rayquaza EX from taking double the amount of damage from Pokemon such as Mega Manectric EX, Raichu, things like that. So Altaria is a very nice Pokemon to include. We are running a single copy of it. We're also running a total of 4 copies of the Skyfield, which I had just mentioned. This is an extremely important stadium card, so we are running the maximum copies of this card in our deck. I decided against running the Ninetales with the Barrier Lock ability. Reason that I did that, guys, is because I felt like it required too much of a setup, and I already felt like we had dedicated a whole ton of our cards to some other Pokemon. You guys will sort of see what I mean, but yeah, so that's why I decided just that we're going to be sticking with a total of 4 copies of the Skyfield. So chances are going to be pretty high that we will be able to, at the very least, win the Stadium War most of the time. So I think that running 4 Skyfields should be more than enough, especially given the fact that we have a whole ton of draw support in our deck, guys. For example, we have a total of 3 copies of the Shaymin EX with the setup ability. Whenever we play this Pokemon from our hand onto the bench, we are able to draw until we have up to 6 cards in our hand. So that's a very, very nice ability. Really allows us to speed up the entire setup of the Mega Rayquaza EX. We're also running a total of 3 copies of the Colress. Normally, this wouldn't be such a powerful supporter card, but again, since we have the Skyfield Stadium card, that is probably going to be at play during most times of the game, and we're almost always going to have a fully loaded bench. So at the very bare minimum, we will be able to draw onto 5 cards, provided of course that we don't have the Skyfield Stadium cards. So Colress works extremely well with this deck. We are running 3 copies of this. Sorry, I also briefly wanted to talk about the Rayquaza EX. It's a pretty solid Pokemon as well. Intensifying Burn can allow us to hit for up to 60 damage, provided that our opponent's active Pokemon is an EX. So that's a pretty cool attack. And also Dragon Pulse is a decent attack in itself as well. We prefer not to use it. Again, the entire purpose of the Rayquaza EX is such that it can evolve into the Mega Rayquaza EX. But nonetheless, I felt like Dragon Pulse was a decent attack, allowing us to... Dragon Pulse is a decent attack, hits for a decent amount of damage, but I don't really like the drawback to it in that it forces us to discard the top 3 cards of our deck into the discard pile. Anyways, discussing some of the other Pokemon that we are running, guys, we are running a single copy of the Virizion EX. A lot of players seem to like the Virizion EX in combination with the Mega Rayquaza EX, and that's very understandable since we have the option of attaching colorless energies and another energy card of our choice. Grass seems to be the way to go. The Verdant Wind ability is a very solid one with all the Seismitoad EX, Trevenant, all of those disruption decks that are out there. Virizion EX seems to be like a very solid choice, so we are running a single copy of it. That Verdant Wind ability is going to prevent our Mega Rayquaza EX from being affected by any sorts of special conditions, provided of course that we have a Grass Energy card attached to him. We're also running a total of 3 copies of the Exeggute. The reason that I really like the Exeggute is that due to its propagation ability, if we have them in the discard pile and the opponent gets rid of our Skyfield Stadium card, for example, we can easily just discard our Exeggute. Well, sorry, if they happen to be on the field, we can easily discard our Exeggute, and then as soon as we bring out a Skyfield Stadium card, we can easily propagate them back into our hand and then lay them back onto the field all over again. Now, of course, one of the drawbacks to the Exeggute is that it has very low HP, 30 HP, very easy to knock out by Pokemon such as the Lysandre EX, and possibly even the Crobats, things like that. So we do have the Mr. Mime that we are running in our deck. With the Bench Barrier ability, it will prevent all damage done to our bench Pokemon by attacks. I feel like Mr. Mime is a very important card in this deck, especially since we are running the Exeggute. Now, it is very possible to to scrap out the entire Exeggute line, and possibly even the Mr. Mime, to increase the Altaria line to a 2-2 line, and also to increase the Pikachu Raichu line to a 2-2 line as well. The most crippling weakness of our deck is that we don't have any solid safeguard counters. So I feel like that's where Mega Rayquaza EX is really lacking in power. Although I haven't really encountered a whole ton of safeguard Pokemon, I feel like for the time being, a 1-1 Pikachu Raichu line should hopefully be more than enough. I mean, Circle Circuit allows us to hit for a massive amount of damage, again, just because we'll ideally have a fully loaded bench so Raichu can hit for up to 160 damage for a single double colorless energy. Again, I would highly recommend you guys increase the number of the Pikachu Raichu line, and possibly even the Altaria line, if you feel like you're going to be encountering a lot of lightning Pokemon or possibly a lot of safeguard Pokemon. I haven't really seen a whole lot of them, so for the time being I feel like this deck build should be more than fine, but again, we'll see how things go within the next upcoming weeks. Alright, so some other cards that we are running, guys. We are going to be running the Computer Search as the A-Spec card. This could easily be scrapped out for either the Scoop Up Cyclone or the Dowsing Machine. But I feel like since our deck is very speedy, Computer Search is probably the best option. Again, I haven't thoroughly tested the other A-Spec cards, so I could be wrong. If you guys disagree with me, please feel free to swap them out. But in our case, we are going to be sticking with the Computer Search as our A-Spec. We're running a total of 4 copies of the Super Scoop Up as well in our deck, guys. Main reason is that, number one, it can allow us to recycle any of our badly damaged Mega Rayquaza EXs, put them back into our hand, and then we can try loading them up all over again. But the main reason is for the Super Scoop Up to work on the Shaymin EXs, so that we can then lay them down onto the field and then draw until we have up to 6 cards in our hand. So Super Scoop Up's a very nice card. It essentially functions as another draw supporter card when used on one of our Shaymin EXs. So we are running 4 copies of it in our deck. We're also running a total of 3 copies of the Mega Turbo. Again, this is just to work in combination with the Mega Rayquaza EX. This is what ideally gets the Mega Rayquaza EX running in a single turn. Mega Turbo seems to work incredibly well with the Mega Rayquaza EX, so we are running a total of 3 copies of this card. And the other cards in our deck are pretty self-explanatory, guys, with the only exception being the Winona, which I'm going to be discussing. So Winona allows us to search our deck for up to a total of 3 normal type Pokemon and then put them into our hands. So Winona can act as a draw supporter card. So that is what I really like about the Mega Rayquaza EX deck. Seems to have a whole lot of draw support, and again, Mega Rayquaza EX is such a menacing Pokemon that I feel like we are going to be seeing a whole lot of him in the current standard format. So Winona will allow us to search, for example, for a Shaymin EX if that's what we'd like, for some draw support, a Rayquaza EX, a Mega Rayquaza EX, even our Swablu and Altaria. So it's an extremely flexible card. We are running 2 copies of it. Again, it seems to work incredibly well with the Mega Rayquaza EX. Anyways, the other cards that we are running in our deck, guys, I'm going to be talking about them very quickly. So we are running a single Startling Megaphone. Again, that is mainly for us to deal with the, the Garbodor special ability. We'd like to shut it down, just so that we can use our Shaymin EXs, Virizion EXs, and our Exeggute abilities, our Mr. Mime's ability as well. We are running a total of 4 copies of the Ultra Ball to allow us to try and get the Pokemon that we need. 3 VS Seekers allowing us to reuse all of our supporter type cards, 2 Lysandres, to let us lure out any one of our opponent's bench Pokemon, a single Lysandre trump card, just to recycle our cards all over again. Again, we're going to be blazing through our deck very quickly, so Lysandre's trump card is a very important card to have. We are running a single copy of the N and Juniper. Seems like a very small amount, and I mean it kind of is, but again, since we are running Shaymin EX's Colress, and just a whole ton of draw support cards, which we can reuse over and over again, that should honestly be more than enough. We're also running a total of 3 copies of the Rayquaza Spirit Link, just to allow us to evolve the Rayquaza EX into the Mega Rayquaza EX without us having to give up a turn. And we are running a total of 9 energy cards. 5 of them are the grass energies and 4 of them are the double colorless energy. Alright guys, so with that we are going to go and find ourselves an opponent. Have to say that this has been a very impressive deck, extremely powerful. Again, the one area where I feel like we could use a little bit of improvement is possibly in our ability to deal with those safeguard type Pokemon. Alright, so it looks like we are going to be able to go first. hopefully we can bring out that Rayquaza EX right away. And okay, so it looks like we're going to start off with an Exeggute, so that's a pretty poor start, but it's just something that we're going to have to bear with. Alright, so I'm going to go and use the Ultra Ball to get rid of the Lysandre's trump card from our hand, and a grass energy card as well, again, because we can always use the Mega Turbo to grab it out. Let's go and bring out a Shaymin EX for a bit of draw support. I'm gonna go and lay down the Skyfield Stadium card. Let's draw up until we have 3 cards in our hand, and awesome, looks like we're gonna have the Rayquaza EX. I'm gonna go and attach a double Colorless energy to him, and now I could evolve it into the Mega Rayquaza EX, or I could potentially use the Juniper or something like that for some draw support. I think for the time being, guys, I will go and evolve it. So I'm going to go and use the VS Seeker just to bring our discarded cards back into our deck. So let's go and use the Lysandre's trump card and then evolve into the Mega Rayquaza EX. We should be able to start pumping a whole lot of damage during our next turn. I don't think our Exeggute is going to get knocked out unless our opponent somehow manages to bring out a Blastoise on turn 1 and then use the Tri-Edge attack to knock it out. So I think we should be safe. We are seeing the Sycamore coming out on our opponent's end. A Lightning and a Water Energy card. So I think our opponent is probably running the Mega Manectric EX as a sort of energy accelerator in combination with the Articuno. I have to say, Articuno seems like it can be a pretty powerful Pokemon with the Delta Plus ability, allowing the opponent to take an extra prize card for every knockout. We're seeing a Manectric EX come out at play and the Rough Sea Stadium card as well. Alright, so this time we're going to go and use the Juniper for some new cards in our hand. So we have another Rayquaza EX. And I can go right ahead and bring out another Mega Rayquaza EX. That's a little bit unfortunate that we can't attack just yet. So let's go and bring out a secondary Mega Rayquaza EX. I'm going to go and attach a double Colorless energy to him. I'm really hoping for the Altaria, guys, because again, that Manectric EX could potentially perform those big one-hit knockouts on us. So I'd really like to avoid that if possible. And unfortunately, we have to go and end our turn once again. Looks like our setup is a little bit slow right now. But again, we do have 2 of our Mega Rayquaza EXs out at play. So hopefully things should go a lot more smoothly. The opponent is going to use the N. Awesome, looks like we do have an Altaria at hand. So I'm probably going to go and discard a Startling Megaphone and the Super Scoop Up from our hand to grab onto the Swablu and then evolve it into the Altaria right away due to the Delta Evolution ability. Alright, so Manectric EX is finally going to start hitting us for some damage. Probably going to target, yeah, so that Mega Rayquaza EX is going to take a little bit of damage. Alright, so let's go and use the Ultra Ball. I think I'm gonna go and get rid of the Startling Megaphone, guys. So let's go and get rid of that and get rid of the Scoop Up Cyclone as well, or a Shaymin EX. Yeah, let's go and get rid of the Scoop Up Cyclone and hope that we have a Swablu. Awesome, looks like we do. Let's go and bring it out and then evolve it into the Altaria. And then I'm gonna go and use the Colress. Unfortunately, we don't have the Skyfield Stadium card at play anymore, so I can't bring out another Shaymin EX for some draw support. Let's go and use the Colress. And awesome, we do have the Skyfield Stadium card now. I mean, I'd like to get that Exeggute back into our hand, so I'm going to go and use the Ultra Ball, get rid of the Winona in our hand, and a Skyfield Stadium card. Let's go and get rid of a Lysandre. I do have 2 VS Seekers in our hand, so it shouldn't be too big of an issue. And let's see, I mean, I think I'm going to go and grab onto the Super Scoop Up. Really hoping for that heads, guys, and let's see if we're going to get it. Awesome, looks like we are going to get it. Let's go and bring that Exeggute back into our hand. A Mega Rayquaza EX. Let's go and bring the one with full HP. Let's go and attach a Grass Energy card to him. Do I have any Exeggutes in the discard pile? Unfortunately, doesn't look like I do, but I'm going to go and get rid of our opponent's Rough Sea Stadium card. So let's go and bring out the Skyfield, and then I'm going to go and hit our opponent's Manectric EX for 120 damage. Reason that I did not decide to bring out the Exeggute at play, guys, was because Manectric EX could potentially snipe it out with its overrun attack, and I don't have a Mr. Mime at play just yet, so I don't think that would have been all that wise of an option. Awesome, looks like the Altaria is paying off. Otherwise, the opponent would have been able to perform the one-hit knockout on the Mega Rayquaza EX. Absolutely something that we did not want to see. Alright, guys, so let's go and use the Colress for some new cards in our hand. I have another Rayquaza Spirit Link, but no other Rayquaza EXs at play just yet. I'm going to go and bring out a Mr. Mime finally. Let's go and bring out a Virizion EX as well. A Shaymin EX for some draw support. And we have another Grass Energy card. I will be attaching that to the Mega Rayquaza EX. And then let's go and knock out our opponent's Manectric EX, hitting it for a massive 210 damage to be able to draw onto 2 of our prize cards. Now, if our opponent does happen to get rid of the Skyfield Stadium card, I believe we have... Oh, no, sorry. We still don't have any of our Exeggutes into the discard pile. I think I'm going to go and use the Lysandre's trump card, though, guys. we do have one of our Mega Rayquaza EXs into the discard pile. I would like to be able to load up another one of them in case we are going to need them. But I think this should be our game. The opponent is having a difficult time. The Chilling Sigh is going to get used. So again, we are immune to the status conditions thanks to the Virizion EX. So that's a little bit unfortunate on our opponent's end. Let's go and use that VS Seeker to grab onto the the Lysandre's trump card, and then I'm gonna go right ahead and use it. And awesome, looks like our cards are going to get shuffled back into our deck all over again. Let's go and use the Ultra Ball to get rid of the Grass Energy card, which I will hopefully be able to retrieve using the Mega Turbo. And then I'm going to go and get rid of the Skyfield Stadium card as well. Alright, so let's go and grab onto another Rayquaza EX, lay down, attach a double Colorless energy to him, the Rayquaza Spirit Link as well, and then let's go knock out our opponent's Articuno, hitting it for 240 damage. My goodness, this Mega Rayquaza EX is an extremely powerful Pokemon, guys. I am very, very impressed by it. I don't think our opponent can really make a comeback anymore. Again, if he was running the Blastoise though, I feel like Blastoise would be a better companion in combination with the Articuno, just to use that Tri-Edge attack a lot more consistently, I think, as opposed to the Mega Manectric EX. Of course, the reason that I am saying that, guys, is that the Blastoise with the Deluge ability, I mean, it is a stage 2 evolution line, but if the opponent was running the the Archie's Ace in the Hole, and he had a whole ton of cards to try and trim down his hand, I feel like that would be a lot more consistent than the Mega Manectric EX in the long run. Hopefully I will be taking a look at an Articuno type deck eventually. Again, I do think that the Delta Plus ability can be an extremely powerful one. Alright, so the opponent is going to bring out another Articuno. I don't think attaching the Water Energy card to his active Articuno was all that wise of a choice. Again, just because the Chilling Sigh is not going to do anything to us whatsoever. So we are seeing an Acro Bike come out on the opponent's from the opponent's side as well. Chilling Sigh again not doing anything. We are immune to those status conditions. Awesome, looks like we've just been able to draw onto the Mega Rayquaza EX. Let's go and bring him out. Use the Mega Turbo to attach a Grass Energy card to him. So now we have 3 Mega Rayquaza EXs fully loaded. And I don't think I'm going to go and use the Lysandre's trump card just yet. So let's go and knock out our opponent's Articuno once again, and then draw onto another one of our prize cards. Okay, so things are really not looking good for our opponent. He hasn't been able to draw onto a single prize card just yet, guys. I feel like we're probably gonna, yeah, so it looks like we are going to go on to the victory after this turn. So just showing you guys how potent of a deck this really is. Alright, so thank you guys very much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.